Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome from all of us at Action Against Hunger. For those that are new to us, we're an international humanitarian organisation taking decisive action against the causes and effects of hunger. We work to ensure people can access clean water, food, training and healthcare. For nearly 50 years, across 57 countries, we've led the global fight against hunger, reaching an amazing 26.5 million people last year alone. I'm Jo, I'm Head of Philanthropy here at Action Against Hunger, and I'm delighted to be hosting today's webinar. And thank you for joining us as we explore how the hospitality industry is creating meaningful social impact through purpose-led partnerships. So you can imagine it's been a challenging time for the humanitarian sector, but one constant we're incredibly grateful for is the strength and generosity of the hospitality industry. Action Against Hunger has been championing the hospitality industry since its inception through initiatives like Restaurants Against Hunger, Too Many Critics, and the Fine Wine and Art Dealer, raising over £15 million to date through these initiatives alone. And that's alongside many powerful relationships beyond these initiatives, including our largest partner, IHG Partners, Hotels and Resorts. As we look ahead to 2026, we're excited to continue celebrating this remarkable sector and its long-standing legacy of generosity and impact. Today's conversation will explore how purpose-led collaborations can help tackle workforce challenges like retention and team morale, while also meeting growing consumer demand for value-driven brands. We're joined by an excellent panel, as you can see, with a wealth of experience and insight, and I'm really looking forward to the discussion. Before we begin, though, let's meet our panel. We'll go around for quick introductions. Name, title, organisation will do, and if you could share one word that comes to mind when you think about today's topic. So as Georgina is top of my screen, I'll say Georgina first, please.
Hi everybody, my name is Georgina Warren. Lovely to be here today. So I'm the Global Inclusion and Impact Director for IHG Hotels and Resorts and been with the organisation for 5 years now. We are one of the world leading hotel companies that cover 7,000 hotels with 2,300 in the pipeline and spanning 100 countries. And we launched our global partnership with Action Against Hunger to help tackle food insecurity in the most vulnerable communities across the world as part of IHG's responsible business journey to tomorrow plan. And one word, I would say responsibility.
Thank you, that's great, Georgina. Over to you, Will.
Hello, I'm Will Beckett. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Hawksmoor. We've got 12 steak restaurants in the UK and Ireland. We've got one in New York and Chicago, and we've been doing this for 20 years. Almost all of those 20 years, but not quite all of them. We've been working with Action Against Hunger. I think really with the thought that if we're a business that makes profit from selling food and drink, that the corollary of that for us ought to be that we give back in that area as well. So that we try to support charities that work in food or water poverty specifically, and Action Against Hunger are our kind of main international partner. And I maybe I don't have a single word, but I might give you two that I'll come back to, which is kind of intrinsic motivation. The cliffhanger for what I might talk about later.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Milo, over to you, please.
Thanks, Jo. My name is Milo. I'm the people partner at Super 8 Restaurants. We're better known for our, I guess, spring of independent restaurants, names like Mountain, Brat, Kiln, Smoking Goat. Yeah, we've been working with Action Against Hunger for a better part of a few years now. I think it's something that both our colleagues and our founders are quite passionate about. And one word that comes to mind for me is commonality.
Thank you, that's great. So we've got some great questions to kickstart the webinar, but please do add any that you might have to the chat, and we're going to try to cover those at the end, if that's okay, everybody. Don't hesitate. Okay, so to the first question, and this is to everybody. Maybe we'll go Milo, Georgina, Will for those, if that's okay. Question 1. In a sector where attracting and retaining people remains a real challenge, purpose can play an important role. Many of you have worked with Action Against Hunger on fundraising or commercial campaigns. How have these initiatives helped deliver social impact while also benefiting your people and culture? And what has made them work well in practice? To Milo.
Thanks, Joe. I think in hospitality, purpose only really works well when it's authentic. I think we've seen businesses where they do initiatives, typically massive multinationals, and you sort of think, okay, and no offense, Georgina, I'm not talking about any particular company, but I think it's difficult to get it right. And I think to get it right, it has to be authentic. So when the cause aligns with your values and your team, that you can genuinely get behind it. So, you know, every business has a different demographic and culture, but I think the principle is ultimately the same. Start with your values, recruit and lead in a way that brings those values to life. And then you can really partner with causes that reinforce them rather than compete with them. And I think with Action Against Hunger, I think the impact is twofold, because one, we're using externally our platform financially, but we're also using our guest community to support a cause that goes beyond our day-to-day business. And I think internally, this really strengthens our culture because it creates pride and belonging. But I think more importantly than that is when the team believes in it, it becomes a shared story across, you know, both front of house and back of house. And I think guests can really feel that energy because it's then coming from the heart. It's not really just a script that sort of, you know, teams are talking about when they're doing such initiatives. And I think a good example of this is when we ran the Myanmar emergency fundraising campaign last summer. We added £1 to every bill for about a month. Of course, you have those small little guest cards to support it with, you know, with the receipt. But I don't think it's the guest card that counts. It's the fact that the team can relate to it. It's something that the team feel passionately about. So when a guest asks, "Oh, why is £1 being added to my bill? What's this for?" It's not just a simple statement of, "Oh, it's for charity. Would you like to do it or not?" It's more of, "This is what it's about. This is what we're doing," and the passion and the purpose sort of unite to create that feeling of purpose. So going back to my point, I think what made it work in practice is it was kept simple. It wasn't really admin heavy, and it was locally owned. So you're sort of empowering the sites to sort of get creative in terms of how they want to get that message across. And then it's no longer really a part of, let's say, a broader CSR strategy, and you're not really talking high level sort of titles anymore. It's becoming a culture builder, and it's being driven from within the teams.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Milo. Now over to you, Georgina.
Thank you, Joe. No, I totally agree, Milo, in terms of just having that authenticity. So how we show up in our communities reflects who we are as a business and a culture. And ultimately, we see it as an opportunity to use our scale for good and make meaningful community impact in a way that resonates with both our colleagues and our guests. Now, we know that people increasingly want to work for organisations that align with their values, and ultimately purpose-led initiatives that authentically link back to your business, like our partnership with Action Against Hunger. It just gives colleagues that meaningful way to contribute beyond their day-to-day role, giving them that pride and belonging. And ultimately, when I saw you know, us launch our partnership with Action Against Hunger, there was such a sense of pride across all of our you know, our hotels and our corporate offices, because there was just something we were all going after that made sense for our business. And you just saw it really gave people a real purpose that just strengthens engagement and reinforces what makes our culture distinctive. And a great example when that engagement really dials up, aligned to some of this community work, is during our Giving for Good month, which we've been running since 2018. And that's the month of September, where thousands of colleagues, you know, use their volunteering days participate in volunteering worldwide, supporting good causes, including, you know, such partners. And, you know, they get to come together out of their day-to-day and serve the community and serve others. And there's such a benefit when you've done that work together, how that can build that team culture, that team belonging, and people feel equipped and encouraged to take action because they've shared something outside of their day-to-day. So benefiting the community, but continuing to strengthen our culture internally. And then when you've got the town halls and you see all the pictures that's happened across the same time and the same days, it's inspiring, you know.
Brilliant. Thank you, Georgina. And over to you, Will.
I thought I might be deliberately provocative, but I mean, by the way, it's not deliberately provocative if I say I start by kind of agreeing with everything. You know, it's really, really wonderful, isn't it, when you see businesses where you are kind of getting close to the ideal, right, of all these people who are really, really bought into a cause, bought into purpose, that it's genuinely a part of their working lives. And I think you see a lot of that in hospitality, and certainly we are working towards that at Hawksmoor. And we're a B Corp. We've worked with Action Against Hunger for a long time. The campaigns that we've done with them and the fundraising has been a really kind of intrinsic part of that kind of push towards trying to be a purpose-led organisation. I suppose the bit that I'd say that is just more controversial relative to what other people have said is, I don't mind advocating for like a minimum involvement in this sort of thing. You know, I think if you took, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something who not loads of people would think of as like the most ethical thing in the world. I don't know, ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs. It doesn't make any difference, right? Just pick one of those, you know, big, very, very profitable business, not run on a purpose kind of basis. If they start getting involved with things like this, if they start donating small amounts of money, really the key thing is impact, isn't it? I mean, and the impact is twofold. The impact that we're talking about is twofold. One is the impact for where the money goes. And, you know, my business partner, my co-founder and I, we've been to Lebanon, we've been to Liberia with Action Against Hunger. We've been at the coalface and seen how incredibly effective small amounts of money are in saving the lives of children, and it's impossible not to be kind of swept along by that. But also the other kind of impact is that we're talking about is the impact it has on your employees. Because of course, it's brilliant. You work at Hawksmoor and you feel like you're involved in something, or IHG or Super 8, whatever it is, and you feel like you're part of something that really, really matters. But it's also possible you're part of ExxonMobil or you're part of Goldman Sachs, and really you're doing your job. You're just trying to make a load of money. But the background knowledge is that some of that money is going and doing something important. And I think that that's okay. It's good, in fact. You know, if more businesses did that, I think it'd be great. So I love the full package, but I also like just, here is like a minimum viable way of connecting what you do to something that actually really, really matters in the world. And I think a lot of businesses would do well to get involved with people like Action Against Hunger, even on that basis.
Brilliant. Great answers from all three of you, and I think much food for thought for the rest of the conversations. The next questions are going to be individual questions, if that's okay. And the first one is for Milo. So Milo, the hospitality sector continues to face high staff turnover, with over a third of employees leaving their roles each year. Drawing on your experience across luxury hotels, boutique openings, and multi-site restaurant operations, what advice would you give fellow HR leaders on creating a genuine sense of belonging in fast-paced environments, and how can this translate into stronger retention?
I think this is one of those questions that you could do a day-long seminar about, especially I think turnover is the most talked about thing behind the scenes. And hospitality is quite a unique one, because I think hospitality has higher turnover than most industries, if you look at the averages. And I don't think it necessarily has to infer that something is wrong in hospitality. I think it's just the nature of the industry within which we operate. You've got various reasons why people leave, let's say after 3 months, 6 months, or a year. It can be because they're students, seasonal work, sort of more junior roles where people are looking for better pay quite quickly or fast development. Let's say somebody joins as a commie chef and sort of after 3 months they already feel that they're good to be a CDP. You may not think they're right, and then they move somewhere else. So you've got lots of various reasons, but I think if it's sort of bring it closer to sort of what we're talking about here today, I think the first thing that I'm quite passionate about is values-led recruitment and realistic previews. Are you hiring the right people that are aligned with the values of the company? And it's not to say that if you're not going to be a right fit, but I feel that if people can join a company which they can relate to, that they can, let's say, if you're a founder-led business, which Super 8 is, I think if they can feel that rhythm and feel that energy of the company, they feel that they're a part of something bigger. They feel relatable. And you can also use another example of, let's say, someone that's a really good operator in a 5-star hotel may not be the right fit for, let's say, for a very informal restaurant. They may struggle to adapt to it because they're used to very structured steps of service, whereas other businesses are, let's say, trailblazers, and they like to sort of set their own rhythm and their own standards of service. So I think values-led recruitment can really help in sort of securing that right talent, and with that, you're sort of reducing your turnover at the same time, because if you're recruiting the right people, likelihood is they're going to stay in that very critical sort of first 3 months where you tend to see the most turnover within most hospitality businesses, at least from my experience. Feel free to correct me on the stats if the others are seeing different sort of insights. But the second point I'd say is consistency and fairness in the daily experience. I think belonging can get damaged quickly when things like rotas feel unpredictable, standards change depending on who's managing, or feedback feels inconsistent. I think clear expectations, respectful communications, and leaders who are consistent under pressure can definitely create a psychological safety net, especially when the pressure's high. And in hospitality, that can fluctuate quite a bit throughout the day and across the shifts. The third point, I think, is also practical support in the first sort of 60 to 90 days. Are proper inductions happening? Are we doing sort of shadow and hope that they fit in approach, or is there a more active buddy system where the right check-ins are happening after week 1, after the first month, within those first 3 months? Because I think when those sorts of conversations are happening the right way, people feel supported, they see a path to improving, and I think they can attach to the team a lot faster. And I think when you sort of join those 3 things together, the retention link becomes quite simple. It's, when people feel that they fit, that they can succeed, and that they matter, they stop leaving for those avoidable reasons, and that ultimately will sort of reduce that hiring churn and the hidden costs associated with it. Things like, training costs, the amount of time you spent recruiting, onboarding, and then if they just leave, you start that process all over again. So it's sort of time that you can actually spend elsewhere, and the wins are actually quite easy. It's just about sort of organizing yourself the right way, and sort of hiring right and sort of spotting the red flags early on.
Great answer. Thank you so much, Milo. The next question is for Georgina, if that's okay. So how do partnerships like the one with Action Against Hunger contribute to IHG's wider social impact ambitions? And what other benefits does it create?
Great, thanks, Jo. And I think this is where my word starts to come to life a bit. So sitting at the heart of our working communities is a pledge to improve the lives of 30 million people through focusing on skills training, disaster response, and food security. We do this through direct funding and working in partnership with expert organisations, right, like Action Against Hunger globally, and then many other organisations locally, and also including our hotels have their own separate partnerships too, with our colleagues also sharing their time, skills and passion to address the social needs in their communities. So with over 2,300 hotels in development, it's vital that as we grow, we do it responsibly and sustainably for our communities, the environment, and the long-term success of our business. Growth is pivotal, right, to any global organization, and we need to ensure that we're doing it and understanding the communities that are welcoming us. In 2025 was the 1-year anniversary of our partnership with Action Against Hunger, and since we launched it, what we've managed to understand and see is that we've supported 5.4 million people, from funding nutrition screenings to strengthening local health systems. And I think when you combine this with the collective impact of our work with all of the other charity partners around the world, in total we've improved over 10 million lives since 2021. And being really clear on the impact that we want to go after. How can we tell that story as well? Because like you said, if we're going to be doing all these things for the community, what's the impact that it's having, so we can continue to tell that story to our hotels, to our owners, and so forth, so that people are really clear that we're connecting this purpose-led work to our business and our culture that we're creating. So
great, thank you so much, Georgina. Now over to you, Will. So Hawksmoor is a B Corp and widely seen as a great employer. What did that commitment change in the day-to-day running of the business, especially for your frontline teams?
So I said again, what did that commitment change? The commitment to being a B Corp?
What did that commitment change in the day-to-day running of the business, especially for your frontline teams?
I think to some extent, really, it's just it's been a natural change that has gone alongside scale. When we started as a small independent, we with the two founders would have just said you want to kind of run things the right way without really being clear on what that meant, but nonetheless agreeing wholeheartedly with each other. And we'd have then kind of, as we got bigger, we'd have started really focusing on charity, sustainability, and being a good employer. That was kind of our threefold mission. And the idea of becoming kind of a purpose-led organization and a B Corp came later with more scale. And the impact, as I see it, really is similar, I think, to the impact of getting bigger. You start to have more structure in place, more transparency, more clarity of clearer goals. You report on things. We produce an impact report every year, and the way that we engage the people that work for us, that at one point was 30 and is now 1,500, a bit more, has changed dramatically. In terms of the actual day-to-day of the waiters or chefs or bartenders who work for us, I don't think it's really changed anything. We've always tried to say that at Hawksmoor, our job is to look after the people who work here, and the people who work here's job is to look after our guests. And overall, we would try and, do a really, really good thing for the people that come in our doors, the people who work here, and our broader communities. And the kind of purpose part of what we do fits in across all three of those things. And the work with Action Against Hunger, I hope, engages all of them. It engages the people that come through the door, the guests. It obviously engages the teams, and I think it's a meaningful part of kind of Hawksmoor brand as we land in any given city. So I think it's been a meaningful part, but I'm not sure if it's changed the day-to-day of the people that work here.
Great, thank you so much, Will. Back to a group question. So I'll ask it, then I will come to each of you if that's okay. Hospitality is built on people, yet it's one of the most fast-paced and demanding sectors to work in. Drawing on your experience, what practical advice would you give leaders who want to empower their teams, build pride and belonging, and unlock the full potential of their people? I'll go to Milo first, please.
So I think that this question's quite a good one for the reason that I think you have to sort of, I'm going to say something a bit provocative, but I think it's worth a bit of deep thought. I think hospitality isn't always for everybody. I think from my own personal journey, when I first graduated, I went into asset management for 8 months. I got out, I never looked back, never went back again. I didn't like it. The one thing I was very fond of was hospitality. And when I went back to think about why did I go back into hospitality with my degree in HR and everything else, I thought, it's something I can relate to. It's something I enjoy, that unpredictability, the energy, the flow, the service, the friends you make, the relationships you make, the guests that you speak to, and sort of that entire sort of energy, that journey is what something I could relate to. And I thought, okay, I want to make an impact through my specialty, which is, well, I'd like to think it's my specialty, which is HR. So that's the first thing to sort of keep in mind. But I think when you sort of look at it, I think removing friction is an important piece. And I think you want to empower people through, my view is empowering people through authentic leadership, and also giving people autonomy. I think previously, going back before my time, but from the stories I've heard as well, it's old school management where you manage and you enforce is sort of, I guess, an outdated model, sort of, I guess, dying out, if you will. I think enabling leaders to be able to make calls on their own, take the initiative on shift, to read the room, because ultimately, when you, and going back to Will's point, is the people at site know how to drive it. It's like, have you got the right people in place? Let them form their energy, their sort of cohesiveness together, and sort of entrust them to know how to read the room properly. So removing the friction, making the basics easy, clear rotas, clear standards. Have they got the right tools and the proper prep? And I think communication is always the one that I think we always talk about the most, but it's the most important one. And I think if those basics get messy, that's when people tend to sort of, well, I wouldn't say burn out all the time, but that's when you feel the pressure, and sort of you spend more time firefighting than actually enjoying, the service delivery. I think going back on, well, we've covered the freedom. I think feeling pride through recognition is another one I'd like to sort of mention. I think especially in fast-paced environments, people need to feel seen. And I think recognition can be overlooked quite commonly, because I think everyone's so in the spirit of, okay, guest service is the delivery where it needs to be. But taking the time to stop and praise people, whether it's in the middle of the shift, after the shift, just those small recognitions. It doesn't always have to be an appraisal. It doesn't always have to be a one-to-one. But I think, after a hard shift, just sort of giving someone a pat on the shoulder and saying, thank you for that. You sort of had my back there. I think those small pieces of recognition can go a long way. And I think a practice that we're doing at the moment in Supre, and that's coaching. We're investing into our leaders and having them become certified coaches. I think that's something that, one, it's professional development for the long term, but also it's an effective tool by which you're really sort of promoting that authentic and autonomous leadership at site level, where, okay, you're actually a certified coach. We don't need to now say, oh, we need to train you on this, or these are sort of the limited parameters through which you can operate. It's like, we entrust you. We trust that you're going to do it at the way you see fit. You can read the room. You can read the team. Over to you. I think things like this can really go a long way in driving retention and engagement, and really sort of keeping calm within service and when things get hard. I've sort of waffled a bit there, but if anyone wants to add to that, please do.
No, great answer. Thank you. Georgina or Will, would you like to add anything?
I'll build. I think in the fast-paced, high-pressure environments, like what Milo's actually kind of spoken to a little bit, is how well-being also can get impacted by colleagues, and how it can get impacted when people don't feel supported, empowered. And I think, not only with the high-pressured environment of hospitality, just everything going on in the world today, people need to be able to come to work and just feel themselves, feel like they can share their outside life and their inside life. So I just think it's, an opportunity sometimes to embed structures, such as in our corporate organisation, we have employee resource groups. In our hotels, we have, ambassadors, experience champions, that kind of give the opportunity to colleagues who want to join, come together, talk about different things, share perspectives, talk about their growth, mentorship, development outside of your supervisor, outside of your line manager, and just get some feedback where you can bounce things off one another, and you can just go to a space where people have similar values to you, and if you want to talk to that, they're open to everyone. And it just speaks volumes about the appetite that I think people have to get involved and shape our culture. Purpose and social impact play a major role in bringing the best in your teams, and a lot of the time then we get those groups to connect with other social impact initiatives, like having a charity partner and bringing that to life. So again, it's another way to kind of bring people together to talk about the culture and the things that are bothering them, and then another way to say, well, we can also use this energy to drive some of the social impact work that we want to do as well.
Thank you, Georgina. Anything to add, Will?
Maybe two quick thoughts. One is that there are some things about hospitality that are kind of non-negotiable, right? Well, I mean, we've probably got a sense of what they are. We've talked about high paced or whatever, but the jobs are quite hard often, physically quite hard. You're on your feet for a lot of the time. You work at a Hawksmoor grill. I can tell you it's quite hot a lot of the time. It skews towards evenings and weekends. It doesn't matter. We could describe a whole load of things. And sometimes I think there's a sort of drift towards trying to refashion hospitality so it is not those things, but actually that doesn't really work. I think you have to, my 2 cents would be, on the one hand, you just kind of got to be clear about the non-negotiables, if this is what hospitality jobs are. And on the other, you have to be really, really clear about the answer on behalf of the people who work for you. What's in it for me? What's in it for me if I work at Hawksmoor, at IHG, at Super 8, at McDonald's, pick a place. And you have to be really good at articulating that answer, because if you don't know what the answer is, or if your answer is indistinguishable from the next person's, what are the chances that the people that you're hoping to employ, or the people that you do employ, get it? And you kind of need to be on the front foot with the answer, what's in it for me? And I think what you're hearing on this call is that at IHG, at Super 8, that strong sense of community is a really big part of it. I think you're hearing that involvement in charity partnerships is a big part of it. But I think if you kept digging, you would start to hear quite clear differences between the 3 businesses on this call, and they would be in turn different from the businesses that each of you work in. So articulating what's in it for me well, I think, is the key to improving turnover stats in the hospitality industry, without, by the way, ever curing the reality, because it is a reality that there will be quite a lot of people who come and go. And also, to some extent, that is fine. It's not a business that has 90% lifers in it. It has a lot of transient people, and you've got to be a really great employer for those people for as long as they're willing to work with you.
Great answers. Thank you so much. Oh, Milo, over to you.
If I could just add to that, a really good point as well, I think, is generational differences as well. Gen Z, Gen Y. I think I'm quite a statistical person by nature, but I think the stats there definitely don't lie. I think, if you look at sort of the demographics of your workforce as well, that should definitely also be a driving factor. I mean, the hotels I've worked at, you have people ranging from sort of 70 all the way down to 18. So how do you sort of, will you ever get the right fit there? In terms of, you can tick everyone's boxes. The answer is probably no. Whereas, in Super 8, we have a relatively young workforce. So in terms of, what's important to them is also going to sort of shape the way in which we sort of go about doing things, because you never want to sort of upset that balance of what's important to people as well, as far as you can.
Great, thank you. This is the final group question, you'll be pleased to hear. So in hospitality, empowering people is often easier said than done, particularly in fast-paced, high-pressure environments. What barriers have you faced when trying to champion people power in your organisations? And where have purpose or social impact initiatives helped to shift mindsets, behaviour or outcomes for your teams? Over to Milo first, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I think in hospitality, empowerment is one of those things that if you get it right, the results are obvious, but also if you get it wrong, you feel it everywhere. So the first part, I think, is pace, especially in service. I think if teams don't have the time to stop and reflect, it's more of a focus on, solve the issue and move to the next. So I think if the foundations aren't strong in the background, training, clarity, prep, the standards, I think empowerment can collapse when it matters most. I think the second one is change fatigue, especially as businesses grow. And as well as the communication in hospitality, you'll sometimes need to take a step back or two in order to take a few more steps forward. But people won't buy into that change if they don't understand the why. And I think this is overlooked, not just in hospitality, but in many businesses. And we don't always get it perfect, but that's why two-way communication, in my view, is really essential. And leaders have to be willing to adjust when the feedback shows that something isn't landing. So being able to take that ownership and sort of say, you know what, you're actually right, we're listening, we're now going to go back and sort of, deliver something that works for everyone. It's that sort of fear of admitting that perhaps something wasn't the best call that can sort of amplify something that doesn't land as it should. Another one I think is inconsistency. If empowerment means that one manager says one thing and another one says another, people can sometimes stop trusting because they're like, well, what is that universal truth? Or is there a universal truth? You'll find that probably there is not one universal truth, but how do you go about sort of managing the differing messages coming from different leaders? How do you land that common message for the teams to sort of understand and unite around? I think that's where risk can quite easily be mitigated. And I think the purpose here with social initiatives such as Action Against Hunger help is that they can sometimes shift that energy from just another task to meaning and shared ownership. So, when the team understands the cause and feels genuinely connected to it, it can become a unifying moment across different roles and sites. And it can also act as a form of employee voice. I'm not going to talk about other charities that we communicate with, but there is another charity that we also work with that we started working with as a result of what our colleagues across our sites have expressed passion and care for. And we've also implemented as a part of one of our benefits as well, with cooperation with that charity. So these sort of social initiatives can have a really strong impact in these sorts of areas. There was one other point I wanted to mention. Yes, I think the main point is that these initiatives can't really be sort of siloed or performative. I think if we really want social impact to land properly, it can't just sit in a narrow box once a year. I think, as Will has said, like he's been to Lebanon, he's actually been to the ground where these things are happening. If you want that empowerment effect to really come to fruition, I think it needs to be part of a wider approach and really enabling your teams to sort of either see it firsthand or sort of go on different sort of demos where the charities get to showcase what's happening in the background, what's the actual impact they're doing. I think being able to see sort of the tangible effects of where that money is going and what your efforts are helping contribute to, that also has a really, really big impact.
Thank you, Milo. Over to Georgina now.
Yeah, I think some of to your point, Milo, a lot of these initiatives can come organisation-wide, and actually then from a leader perspective, it's leaders really connecting and understanding how all of this work can really drive performance. Sometimes when leaders are trying to drive performance, they see it as so separate from all these things that we've spoken to, but actually belonging, all this social value encourages people then to give that discretionary effort, and actually will, the teams will do their best for you when you actually can talk to it, feel really comfortable about what is the connection between performance and some of the social value work, and actually putting time in to say this is what we're going to go and do as a team, so that actually colleagues feel like their leader believes in it, as not just, I guess, the organisation as well. So I would say that's really key. And then from an organisation perspective, it's similar to what Will said, how are you tying everything into your business strategy, your people strategy, so that actually it doesn't seem like something that's separate, and that people can start to see how inclusion, social value knits everything that we're doing together, which is ultimately driving the business forward. So I think just twofold, what's the leader doing, but then organisation, how are they bringing it all together so that people feel empowered too?
If I can just add to that, I think a really good example that's come to mind as of recent, it's when you're launching something, even if it's a small unrelated initiative to this, but I think it's the delivery that's really important. I always say if you're on the receiving end, if you just get an email from, let's say, head office and says, oh, we're doing this, we expect you to do X, Y, and Z, and that manager's got 1,000 other things to worry about, they're just gonna be like, okay, I hear you, but they're gonna put it on the back bench. But are you truly championing it by sort of, you know, having that presence at sites? Are you actually making yourself visible and actually hearing people before you deliver it? So it's like, yes, you've got a concept of what good looks like and how you want to launch it into the business, but have you actually gone around to leaders in the business and said, sort of off the record, this is what I'm planning to sort of launch into the business. What's your view on it? How would your team feel about this? Asking those, just going back to basics can really help you sort of refine it before you launch it. Because, you know, we've all had it where we've tried to launch something and the desired effect was the opposite. And you're like, well, what went wrong there? And I think going back to the basics on these things can really, really just go a long way of just really communicating clearly before you launch.
Yeah, great, thank you. Back to over to Will now, please.
So the question was around friction, wasn't it, in autonomy for teams? It's just I think probably for me that the one that's on my mind most recently is clarity. You know, there are various forms of clarity, right? In terms of articulating what the goals of the organization are, or in terms of what the wanted outcomes of somebody's job or a specific project are, or even what the kind of, you know, just the basic framework of roles and responsibilities. What is your decision? What isn't your decision? Where do we want your input? Where is that not the right thing? And I think that most of the times that autonomy and pushing that down to a local area have kind of failed for me is because there hasn't been the clarity in place to really kind of articulate what is it that we're doing here? What is your role in it? And allow the thing that we all want, right? Which is autonomous decision making at the most minimum viable level, people to be allowed to make mistakes as long as they learn from them. I think clarity is the biggest source of friction. Lack of clarity is the biggest source of friction.
Great, thank you very much, everybody. We now have a couple of questions. Got two questions here, so I'll just read out the first one from Madi Taki. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Apologies if I haven't. I'm interested to learn more about employee buy-in. Are you thinking about shaping partnership activities that will create an SCR ESG impact that will resonate with employees from the offset, or do you look to build buy-in along the journey and as you deliver outcomes, so telling the impact story, metrics, or impact reports? Essentially, at what point do you think about employees and what they want when deciding on social impact activities? Does anyone want to volunteer to kick that one off, or shall I?
I don't mind picking up.
Thanks, Will.
Picking up on that if you like. Certainly at Hawksmoor, I think the answer is that we try to bake it in at each stage of the decision-making process. So we often talk about in commercial decisions, you know, brand, people, money. What's the impact going to be on the brand? What's the impact going to be on people that work here? And then does this make financial sense for us? So I think when we go about thinking about ESG activities or purpose-led activities, however you want to phrase that, there is something, you know, it's very similar, isn't it? Brand, people, impact is probably the thought. How's it going to affect brand? How's it going to affect the people who work here? And is it going to have the relevant impact? When we started becoming a B Corp, we started doing something that people in the purpose world like a lot, which is double materiality assessments. Double materiality is really when you work out, is this good for the business and is this good for the purpose of whatever it is that you're doing here? So from an Action Against Hunger point of view, the impact on communities and individuals, and then from the kind of corporate point of view, how does it align with all of our goals? I think you have to think like that really from start to finish. By the way, either of the things that you ask about, do you just pick some things that you think you ought to do and then try and take employees along the journey? Or do you pick things deliberately thinking about what's going to engage employees? Are both legitimate? I think there's a better way of doing it, but I would go back to where I started, really, which is doing something is really, really important. And engaging your employees with it is really valuable. Whether you put the cart before the horse or not, to me, doesn't really make a difference. I would focus more on doing something.
Brilliant. Thanks, Will. Anything to add, Georgina or Milo?
Yeah, so we have a pillar as part of our business strategy called Care, Communities, and Planet. So care is, the right thing for our colleagues, communities, and then planet for the environment. So that is something that we speak about regularly throughout the year, where colleagues are really engaged. And actually then when a partnership like Action Against Hunger is announced, there's conversations that are happening with all of the right teams about the right partner, what it's driving, and then that will then get announced to the business and the colleagues. But I think the most important piece that we're wanting to focus on moving forward is the impact, the stories, because as you can launch a partnership, you can do all of these great things, but if our colleagues aren't hearing kind of the impact that they're having, how are they going to continue to remain engaged? So that is the real focus. Hearing what these partnerships are actually doing for our communities is the most powerful thing for us right now.
Great, thank you. Milo, anything to add, or shall I go to?
I think that's all the bases covered.
Yeah, super, thank you. Next question from the audience, from Heloisa. Back to motivation. From the point of view of who's looking for a job in hospitality, guest relations, etc., I see most companies looking for employers who execute tasks, and very few looking for someone with a view towards a positive change. What would be your advice on looking for a job in this sector that can actually give workers an opportunity to take action towards social and environmental change?
I think that goes back to what I spoke about earlier, and I think there's certain businesses that are very, as I like to call it, old school, and they're sort of stuck in their ways and they're very resistant to change for whatever reason. And I think it's very hard to sort of break that barrier upwards. I'd say look at companies, as I've sort of initially, is look at what their values are, sort of question that in the interview process as well, because I'm sure it's happened to all of us. You go to an interview, they say one thing, but once you start the job, you're like, this is nothing what they said it was going to be like in the interview. And it's that clarity that Will spoke as well. I think it all links together. I think trusting your gut as well at the interview phase, where you're sort of, let's say, going into guest relations and you want to have a really good social impact. And I think, guest relations is definitely one of those roles where your impact can be felt in many ways, whether it's the amenities you're providing to your guest in the room or just understanding your guest. But, what is the constraint within that role that will, let's say, stop you from making a suggestion to the managing director, for example, or to your people team and say, you know what, this is something we're really passionate about. What can we do about that? If the response is, look, we've got no budget for it, fair enough, or we're just not able to consider it, okay, fair enough. But, you should probably be asking questions, what can they do for me? And I think this is what employers need to be asking as well, is what can we do for our teams? It's not just what can they do for us, but what can we do for them as well? I think I've sort of answered the question indirectly, but if you've got a follow-up, I'm more than happy to sort of engage on it.
Want me to chime in?
Please do, Will.
Well, maybe just a few bullet point type answers. Companies looking for employees who execute tasks. We shouldn't kid ourselves, by the way. Almost all of the employees at any of the three organizations that you're listening to now have executing tasks as a pretty high part of their job description. We have, let's just say we have 1,500 people at Hawksmoor. Only one person, really, the head of purpose, has a job that is exclusively about taking action towards social and environmental change, for example. The other 1,499, albeit I hope that lots of them are engaged with this and give us suggestions, etc., have executing tasks of various kinds quite high in their job description. So I think that's the first thing. Second thing, in terms of advice on looking for a job in the sector, I think that there are a few ways to do it, really. One is finding an organization who shares your values already and testing, I suppose, at the interview stage, whether there is any opportunity there for input, involvement, etc., and what that might look like. The second is finding smaller businesses often who would like to develop in that area, who would like to take action towards social and environmental change, but don't know how to, or are looking to make that part of their work, and trying to articulate to them how you could be helpful in that area. I would, just as a slight caveat, and I'm not saying this is you at all, but I'd be slightly careful about, I'm just someone who likes these things and wants to work towards them. I think in that scenario, you want to find the values-led employer and try to work out how you can do it. But if you have a very clear idea, then I would go to probably a smaller business and try and insert yourself into the goal of helping.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Will. We've got a question specifically for you. In your experience, have you seen over time that purpose-led partnerships strengthen brand trust and customer loyalty? And does participating consistently in campaigns like Restaurants Against Hunger help with this?
I mean, I think I'm going to give an unpopular answer. I don't think customers fundamentally care. And when I say they don't fundamentally care, I mean, do they actually change their dining habits as a result of how you do things? And I think the answer is no. I'm sure, by the way, that there are a lot of people who come to Hawksmoor a lot who feel even better about the brand because we do this sort of thing. But if we stopped being a B Corp tomorrow, if we stopped supporting Action Against Hunger tomorrow, would our revenue change next year? I think as long as we kept being a really good restaurant and a really good hospitality organization, it probably wouldn't change significantly. Equally, if we doubled what we did, would it improve? And I suspect the answer is no. However, it really matters to some of the people who run the business and some of the people who are in the business who have been here for a long time and are heavily tenured and heavily invested in Hawksmoor and its outcomes. And I think that if you were to sit customers down and talk to them for a while, by which I mean 5 to 10 minutes, which, as you can imagine, almost no restaurants get the opportunity to do with their customers, and you were to say, this work that we do connects to the very best people that we have, and the very best people that we have connect to you having a nice lunch and a nice dinner or a nice martini here. Do you think it's important now? They'd all say, okay, now I get it. Now I get it, because it matters, because you're connecting it to that question I said earlier, what's in it for me? And I do think that bit works, but it isn't direct and linear in the way that I think we all wish it were a little bit more.
Thank you, Will. That's great. And the final question is quite a good one to sort of finish up with, I think. So Laura would like to ask the panel how they see the hospitality sector's social role evolving over the next 5 years. Should we go to Georgina first?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know how if the hospitality sector's role will drastically change, because I think it's always been rooted in people and the community. But I do think customers want to see more of the community reflected into the experiences that they are going on, and the faces of, luxury and all different kind of sectors are starting to change in what they're looking for. So what I do see is maybe that responsibility deepening in how much we are continuing to support the community and the work that we're doing, and really focusing on then the impact of the action. So where maybe prior it's just about having a partnership, and there might have been an element of a tick box element to some of this work. I think now the people that do care about it, customers that do care about it, colleagues, they want to see the impact of the work, and it's all about then embedding, like I said before, the social value, the inclusive value into how we grow as a business, how you do your business, how we partner to support the communities that welcome us, because the people that care want to know that you're doing it inherently, innately, and in the right way, and it's not just kind of a performative activity, and that is really meaningful. So that's what I would say. No huge shift, but deeper and broader.
I'd agree and build on that. I'd say, and one thing we do at Super 8 a lot is sort of collaborations with our suppliers and sort of other businesses, cooks, chefs, that are aligned with our business, whether it's from a values or a sort of social perspective. For example, I think next week in March, we're going to have a women in wine event in one of our restaurants, which is all about celebrating the empowerment of women within hospitality and stuff that they do good. So I think it's probably going to be more of the same, but as Georgina said, it will probably be felt a bit louder, but I don't think there will be much change in what's being done. I think it's just, you'll probably, if I had to sort of guess here and sort of predict, you'd probably see more of an uptake in these sorts of initiatives, whether it be charitable or sort of alike businesses and partners and suppliers. I think you'll probably see more of that. And I have seen a bit more of it on social media in recent months.
Thank you. To Will?
I think the only bit that the only bit that makes me think I don't know the answer is the phrase "the next 5 years." I think what you'll see, and I've been doing this for almost 25 years now, is that there is an element of cycle to this sort of thing. We've had definitively periods where the hospitality industry has become more ethical, more purpose-led, more open to things like diversity and inclusion, more embedded in communities. And we've also had periods where they've retrenched from that. I mean, you only need to look at some countries in the world to see businesses that were trumpeting their ethics fairly recently, suddenly changing dramatically what they do because commercially that is the right thing to do, or politically the environment's changed or whatever. So the next 5 years, I don't know. But I suspect that when you even out those cycles over a period, you're going to see hospitality more deeply embedded. That thing that Georgina was saying, deeper and broader, more deeply embedded in communities, in their role as social purpose. And I think that connection between hospitality venues or businesses, their guests and their employees, is also going to deepen in a kind of an age where we are moving more and more into kind of disconnected and technology led lives. I'm not saying we're tech proof, but a lot of human connection starts to happen here. And I think for the hospitality sector to thrive, it's going to have to embrace a lot of that. So I suspect long-term good, short-term, your guess is as good as mine.
Oh, well, thank you so much to all three of you, for your truly inspirational input today. It's been really thought-provoking. Thank you. Before we close, we're running out of time, but if we could briefly reflect back on those initial words that you both shared at the start of today's session. How do you feel about that word, and has your perspective changed at all? Georgina?
I think the words has come up throughout our conversation. Responsibility as a global organisation serving local communities. This is what we need to be doing, especially as in the rate that we're growing. So still very much committed to that. Thank you. And Will?
Yeah, I mean, I think the commitment runs pretty deep, really. I think that some businesses will set their stalls out, say these are fundamentally the kind of people that we are and the kind of way we want to conduct ourselves, and we are willing to weather storms to do that. And there is an element, like I say, there's an element of that going on now, and I think the test of it really is not so much do you honor those commitments and that way of operating when things are easy or when decisions that you have to make are simple, but do you honor them when things get more difficult, or you have to make really hard decisions between difficult outcomes? Do you at that point stick true to the sort of the integrity and the values that you have? And I think that's really the acid test of it all.
And Milo?
I think the word still stays the same. I think commonality, even though it's not expressly even mentioned, I think it's definitely we've all been discussing things that we all share a common view on. We're all commonly related to. So I think definitely commonality is the word that will stay the same for me. And I think I've come out with it with more insights from the other speakers too. And I'd like to think that I've given some insight as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much again to our amazing panel, and also a big thank you to you as well, our audience, for joining us today. We really hope you've enjoyed the session. We're going to be sending out the recording really soon, so obviously feel free to share it with colleagues or anyone else who you think might benefit from hearing about the conversation. You know, hearing from our incredible speakers today makes one thing clear: the hospitality sector is facing real pressure, yet it continues to lead with resilience, purpose and impact, which is incredible to hear. For organisations like ours, that leadership directly enables life-saving work. It's been inspiring to hear what that looks like in practice and how businesses are benefiting in return. For anyone in the audience who isn't already working with Action Against Hunger, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. So please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we'd be happy to explore ways in which we could collaborate together in 2026 in a way that supports both your business goals and your people. And just a final thank you to everyone again for making this session so insightful.